Okay, this is the full guide to Imperator Rome modding. I'm not going to be doing any editing. I'm going to one-take it all, so it's going to be a great video. We're going to start with the Imperator modding index. This is a forum post by Paradox devs made long ago. You really need to understand this to understand any of Imperator modding. So the first thing you need to do is set up an environment for how you want to do your modding. There's multiple options. You can use either Sublime Text, which is what I have, or VS Code with CW Tools. Sublime Text has an Imperator Tools plugin that I've made that I'll be using today. VS Code has a CW Tools plugin that's very similar. They both have good tooling for Imperator scripting. Either one will work. So we're going to look into this. The first thing you're going to want to look at is the basic scripting in Imperator. So there are three main components of scripting. The first is scopes. A scope is like an area, or a country is also a scope. A scope is who something happens to in an event, a trigger, an effect. Scopes are everywhere. They're the most fundamental part of the script system. You can scope from something to another scope. So, for example, we have a country, and inside of the country scope there is a current ruler. And the current ruler, if you wanted to scope back to the country, you could do employer. And this can go on and on with scope chaining. An easier way to write this that would do the exact same thing would be like this. You can use this dot notation to chain your scope, your scopes. So that is scopes basically. Then we have triggers. Triggers are why something happens. So a trigger like religion, that's not a trigger. Trade goods, for example, this would check the trade good of a province. So you can do trade goods is grain, trade goods is leather. There is plenty of triggers, all kinds, to check for all kinds of different situations and respond to them based on the trigger. And then we have effects, which is what happens. Effect is like what happens after we check for the trigger to make sure it's supposed to happen. So the most basic effect I usually go with is add treasury. Effects just do things to scopes, on scopes. Effects are used in different scopes. So for example, this add country modifier effect is used on the country scope, and the add state modifier effect would be used on the state scope. This is the same for triggers as well. If I used has, it's the same. Like the triggers and effects are dependent on the scope that you use them in. These are some of the scopes in the game. There's more. There's country, character, province, area, state, region. There's plenty of scopes. This is just a few of them. So if we are in an event, right, and we start the event, say we want to save a character as a scope, so we can reference that character later in the event. We can do it like this. So this scopes to, it iterates through all characters in a country and saves that random character. And then later in the event, sometime later, this could be somewhere, anywhere in an unbroken event chain, you can scope to this character and run effects on him or do things. So effects, many of them that are related to scopes have what's called iterators, which we can use any /random /ordered or every to scope to or check for things related to that object, and this returns like an iterator that makes it convenient to go over it. So this is random. What random does is it picks one random character that fulfills that limit. So here I'm going to change this to order. What order does is it returns a list of the characters in an ordered manner. So you can say ordered by, say I want to order by the popularity. So a character with high popularity will show up at the very top of the list. And this will just save the most popular character in the country. You could also, with ordered by, specify a max. And then run that effect on the 10 most popular characters in the country. Here, with every, it would just go over every character in the country. Any is another iterator. It is only a trigger, and it can only be used in trigger fields. And it's used to check if any characters fulfill that condition, or fulfill it, the triggers like within it. So this would check if there's any character with popularity greater than 10. Okay, that is the basics of the script system. We'll go over this. So root, when you see the word root, it refers to like the root scope of the event. So say you fire a country event, the root of that event would be the country that the event fired for. Prev is another one that's kind of important. So say that this effect is in the country scope, and you scope to a random province in the country. And now if I use prev, what this prev does is it scopes back to country from random province. So it basically means the previous scope. This is like the current scope. It's only ever used when you're comparing something to like one scope to another scope. So for example, I have I'm trying to find a random country, and I want to make sure its religion isn't the same as the root religion. So this compares the two scopes of the random country's religion, which is this, to the root religion. It's worth noting that all iterators like this, there's plenty of other things too. They can have a limit that limits what they iterate over. I did this earlier. What else? Other components. So there are several logical operators, I guess. We have and, or, not, nor, and NAND. So and first of all, these are only triggers, so none of these, you see how I'm in an effect field here, this would be incorrect. All of these logical operators can only be used in trigger fields. So here we have and. The default is and, so this is the exact equivalent to this. You don't need to write and unless you're inside of an or, because then you can check for multiple things like that. Not just negates the trigger, so this would just check that your treasury is not 10. And then we have nor and NAND. Nor is just not or, NAND is not and. That makes sense. Yeah, so there's numeric operators as well. We have greater than equal, not equal. You know these, it's fucking math. If statements. If statements are an important part of the scripting language. So here we have a conditional check. It will check if you're a monarchy, it'll give you 10 legitimacy. If you're a republic, it'll give you 60. And otherwise, you get 100. This is basic flow control. You need these. I don't know what else to say about that. There's also ifs for triggers. So you see I'm in this trigger field now. I can use trigger if. And this will evaluate a different trigger based on if a certain trigger is true. So if I'm a monarchy, it'll check if I have 10 legitimacy. If I'm a republic, it'll check if I have 60, and so on. That doesn't matter. Lists, you probably don't need those. Variables are very important. So set variable. Variables let you control the state of things. You can set a variable like this, and then you can remove it like this. You can check for it like this. Or you can reference it like this. Keep in mind that variables are saved on the scope that you set them on. So if I were to scope to a random character and save this variable, I wouldn't be able to use it in the country scope because this variable is now saved on this random character. So you'd have to scope back to the character to reference the variable. There's also a more complex notation for declaring them. You can set the name. The days it will be, the variable will automatically get removed after this amount of days. And then you can also set a value, which can be, it can be a numeric literal, it can be a boolean, yes or no, or it can be another scope. So you can save objects inside of variables and then reference the objects from the variable later. So here I save a character as a scope, and then I save that scope as the object, as the value of the variable, and then I scope to the variable and give it 10 popularity. This is perfectly valid. So that is variables. One more thing I didn't mention is change variable. You can change variables, add, subtract. You get it. One more thing about this. If you have a variable and you try to reference it like this, you need to make sure that it exists. This doesn't only... Oh, that's wrong. You need to have this check as well. This is because if you try to scope to something that doesn't exist, it'll throw a shitload of errors and it just won't even work. So always, before you scope to something that has a possibility of not existing, put this exists check here, and it won't throw any errors. So that is the basic scripting guide. Now what I'm going to do is just go through the common folder in each file, each folder, and talk about how to do everything. So the first useful one here, all of these you're typically not going to need anything with. The first useful one here is the AI plan goals. So you can set kind of like the AI behavior roughly. It doesn't work very well based on a trigger. This isn't a good one. This is a better example. So here, if this ruler is a lunatic, he has a lunatic trait and they're not tribal and they are an AI, they'll be more aggressive, they'll have higher AE, they'll be extremely untrustworthy, and they're just crazy. So this is pretty much all the effects that you would want to change with AI plan goals is listed here. Anything more than that, you probably don't want to do. That's AI plan goals. Let's go into ambitions. Ambitions are a little bit more complicated. Characters have ambitions. Let me find an easy one, because that one is really complicated. That one is not much easier. Here we go. So characters can get ambitions when they want to, say, do things. I don't know. So they have triggers. You check, can they be picked? All ambitions need this here, these scheme precondition triggers. We have a finished when. This is basically the trigger that marks when the scheme gets finished. If it doesn't finish before this set duration, I don't know what this does. I'm not really sure. All of them have it though, so you should probably use it. Abort. This is the trigger for, what will abort the scheme before the end duration. Chance. This is the AI chance of, like, the chance that the AI character will pick this scheme. You can put modifiers to, like, modify the AI behavior here. And here we have the on action. Well, there's a modifier. So this modifier is given to the character during the duration of the scheme. So they'll have it for this 365 days. And this is the important part of schemes. So each ambition sets several on actions. I'll search for this one. So there's 3 of them. You can have 4 of them, I guess. You can have it on monthly that fires every month, on start, on finish, and on abort, which are just ways to respond to different things that happen during the event or during the scheme. And then you just run your effects. There's all kinds of things you can do. That is Ambitions. Let's look at buildings. Buildings are easy. They just have a modifier, your cost, the time, potential, and allow. You can set AI behavior and max amount. There's modification display. This determines the order that the modifiers will show up in on the GUI. That's building, so really simple. Let's look at character interactions. So this is they were nice enough to write a file for this. So this is a basic character interaction. Let's say it's just Mary, I don't know. You can send a message on another nation, does make sense. This is a trigger if it's the potential. Character interactions have two hard-coded scopes that are sent to them. It's scope actor and scope target. The actor, as you can see from this comment, is the country that it's happening on. So if you do it on other nation, it'll be the other nation, and if you do on own nation, the actor will be your nation. Target is always the character that you're using the interaction on. Then we have allowed triggers. And then there are these character target actor triggers and character target triggers. These can be more than just characters. They can also be a country target or actor trigger and a province target or actor trigger. And what these do is it opens up a GUI menu that allows the player to select a scope and send that scope to the next effect and it would save it when it's selected as scope : recipient, as you can see here. And then you just put a trigger in and it actually builds a list, and you select from the list based on this trigger. That's pretty much all there is to character interactions. So moving on, coat of arms. I'm not going to go over all of this. I'm just going to show how to make a quick new flag. So this, we see the Roman flag. If you hover here, you can see the colors. Basically, they just have colored emblems. You can give them an instance in which you can change the rotation, the size, other things. Yeah, you see the scale here of the colored emblems. Colored emblems are basically these kind of files. They have two colors in them. This pink and this yellow color, when you make them, they're fairly straightforward to make. And then, as you can see here, this SEL, this corresponds to the country tag. So this will be given to the Seleucids at the beginning of the game. There are also, as you can see, so this one doesn't have a specific country it's given to at the beginning of the game, and that's because it has it's given during the game using the change country flag effect. So that's flags. Moving on. We don't need to talk about combat tactics or cultures. Well, let's go into cultures. So cultures have a color. Who gives a fuck about colors? There's levy templates. This is for culture groups. You can also define a levy template per culture, and it basically just defines the army composition of that particular culture. There's primary, second, and flank. These are very important. Make sure you set these, and they correspond to like roughly the ratios given in the levy template. It's not perfect, but it's alright. These are always the same. You can define male names, female names, and family names for cultures, and then barbarian names. There's the graphical culture. The graphical culture is usually what determines things like what kind of city building models they're going to get and what kind of unit models they'll have. It can do other things, like port models as well. You set an ethnicity for them. All cultures need an ethnicity. This basically determines how their portraits look. So like Romans will look Roman, Africans will look African, stuff like that. And then you just define the cultures, just like this. It's very simple. That is culture. Custom localization is an important part, very important. It's hard to explain though. So here we have a custom localization, and it's called, as you can see here, in localization with this .custom function, and this .custom function is available for all scopes. And you basically call it like this. So you see the get treatable disease, and then we can see it here. What this does is it evaluates all of these triggers, and based on which trigger is true, it will return a different set of text. So they have it set up to where this returns, the treatable illness that you currently have. You can also do entirely different localization keys. So here we have different medical accident types. This is basically, it's a great way to get dynamic flavor in, especially for localization, like based on the culture group or stuff like that. Death reasons, I don't know why I'm going to look at these, but yeah, this is death. Deities, Isn't can tell you all about these, but I guess I will. So we got triggers. There's two triggers. There's this polytheistic. Yeah. This is the standard trigger. Most of them look like this. You can do whatever you want. It can be more, but this is like the basic one that a lot of them have. You give an icon. This is corresponding to the deity category, usually. There's a lot of icons to pick from, though. You have a passive modifier. This is applied at all times in Omen. This is the bonus you get when you pick the deity. The deity religion, the trigger for deification, the category the deity belongs to. This is pretty fucking self-explanatory. And then unactivate. So you can, what this means is if a deity is deified, it runs these effects when they're activated. It should be called on deity activated. This is a dumbass name. And then you just run effects like this. There's lots of them to pick from. Diplo stances, you're probably never going to ever need to use these, but it's just a modifier in an AI field. That's that. Let's go down. Event pictures. Event pictures are very cool. Great part of Imperator Rome. They go hand in hand with event themes. So event themes are, they can have an icon. It's unused in vanilla. Do not use it. It won't do anything unless you set it up. And they have a sound effect. The theme is basically just what defines a sound effect. And then here are the event pictures. So here's an example of an event picture called City Country. And it has the hubbub theme, which you can see here. Uses this sound effect. And each picture you can define like this with a separate trigger and give like a different texture based on, you know, the trigger. So you show a different picture in different situations. That's event pictures. Let's see. We're going to go to governments. Governments are easy. So you define what kind of idea slots that they get. This can be maximum of 4 because there's only 4 idea slots in the UI. The type of government it is. This is Republic, Monarchy, or Tribal. I don't think there's another one. No, I don't see one. So, and then there's a bonus. The bonus, this is the bonus that you get when you have these military idea groups. This is the base modifier given at all times. That's self-explanatory. That's governments. Governor policies. This is basically just a modifier on the state that they govern, and then the AI chance to do it. Yep. I'm not going to go over any of this great work stuff. Here's heritages. These are basically just a modifier and a trigger. So you give a modifier. Heritages always have, it's not like a rule, but they all do. They have 2 good modifiers and 1 bad modifier, and they have a trigger. Ideas. You won't ever have to change these. They just have a trigger, a modifier. Inventions are slightly more involved, so they have a couple of fields. This is basically everything. So they have an on activate. You can run an effect when a invention is taken. There's a modifier that the invention gives, what the requirement, like the previous invention requirements are. You can set whether it's a keystone. A keystone gives, like, I don't know, it just looks different in the UI. And you can also set a specific icon with an icon override like this. Those are inventions. They're very easy. Laws. Laws are very similar to inventions. They just have a modifier. As you can see, they're grouped into law groups. So each law has several groups within it. So we have the potential for this law group is tribal, and then you have the several laws within the group that each have an allow and a modifier, and they can also optionally have this on enact. That is laws. Legion distinctions. These are really just modifiers, again, like many other things. You have an icon, a commander modifier, which is just a character modifier, and a unit modifier. Levy templates, we already went over these. Loyalty. I fucking hate loyalties. So the way they set up loyalty in this game is to change the loyalty of a character, you have to use this add loyalty effect, which adds a loyalty that you define in common/loyalties like this. You basically just give it a time, like the loyalty value. This is basically the loyalty of a character. And then you have to localize this as well, or it'll look very bad. That is loyalty. Military traditions. These are fairly straightforward. Image color for the whole tree and allow for the whole tree. This is usually just a few culture groups, maybe some other things. And then for each military bonus, there's a modifier, an icon, what it requires, and an optional on activate. And then in military bonuses, or in military traditions, there's these special effects that are only used here. You can use this enable tactic, and there's another one called, I think it's enable unit. It's maybe unit type. I don't remember what it is, but it's something along those lines. Basically, you can enable combat tactics and unit types within military traditions, and you put it outside of the modifier because it's not a modifier. That's that. We're going to look at missions, mission trees. Missions just have a lot of fields, so when you start, you need to define the potential, the abort, the chance. It would be better to look at an existing one. So here's a very simple one that I have. I set the icon, the header. It's not repeatable. The potential is what will make it show up. The abort is what will make it abort. These are self-explanatory. That's basically a mission. Missions are pretty straightforward. Let's look at modifiers. These are literally just modifiers. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Named colors. So you can name a color, use it somewhere else. Like in coat of arms, for example, or you can use it in the change country color effect. Named colors. Offices, don't mess with those. On actions are fairly confusing, but they make a lot of sense once you understand them. So here is a bi-yearly on action. It basically fires effects and events at like a hard-coded interval. So for this one, it's every other year. On actions have 3 separate fields. Here we go. Just trying to find an example of delay. So we have a on actions field, and here we can define custom on actions that you can run effects in and just treat like a normal on action, except it won't conflict with the vanilla one. Okay. So you can put an effect field here in the on action. Run effects. Very important though, the effect field is not additive. If you define an effect field in your mod and the vanilla game also defines one, your mod will entirely overwrite it and the vanilla one will not run. So keep that in mind. Events section just picks random events. or it'll fire all of these. The random events will only fire one of these. That's on actions. Opinions are another fucking stupid feature of this game. So if you want to change the opinion of a country of another country, you have to use this add opinion effect. That works like this. So you give the modifier like this, and then you do the target of like what you want to add it on. So scope actor is just some country, and then you set the value of the opinion and the decay. That's opinions. They're dumb. It should just be a value. I don't know why it has to be like that. Party agendas, party types, I'm not going to look at, because if you have to do those, I'm truly sorry. Let's look at province names. So you can define specific province names for culture groups, tags like specific countries or just cultures. You basically just make a file with the culture group, culture or tag name, and you define provinces like this. So this is province ID 285, and then this is the localization key for it. So you need to put this in a loc file like this, for example. That's province names. Very easy. Religions. Religions have color, modifier, category. Categories are fairly confusing. Typically, all you ever want to do is use the Pantheon category and don't even think about using another one. You can set if they can deify the sacrifice icon and sound. That's pretty much it for religions. Script values are another important part of the script system. So this is the info file for the script values. It's the only well-written info file in the entire base game. So here we have a named script value. You can set a base value at 0, and you can add, subtract, multiply, divide, modulo. These are all just math operations. If you have a fucking brain, you understand these. These ones are a little bit confusing. So this basically returns a random number in a range of two numbers. This one's for fixed point, this one's for integer. You never ever need to use this one. Very extremely rarely. Most of the time you just need integer range. Operations are executed in the order they're defined. You can inline script math. This is very useful. It can be used practically everywhere. This kind of logic. Yep, you can chain script math as well, just like I was showing with the scope chaining earlier. Integer ranges. Yeah, you can use lists. So if I wanted to count all of the countries, or all of the armies in a country, say, or add 1 gold for every army, you would do it like this. That is script math. It's very important to understand script math. It's like a really essential part of the game. Scripted effects. Yet another important part of the game. extremely important for scripting. You need to know these. So scripted effect is basically like a function with several arguments, and the arguments, the only data type that they can possibly be is a string, and you can have as many arguments as you want. So I'm going to define a scripted effect called my effect, and in this scripted effect I'm going to add treasury, and then if number equals 1, number is just the argument that I'm passing in here. This can be anything at all. It's just like it could be XYZ, it could be butt poop, it doesn't matter. It's just a string, it's one of your arguments. If it's 1, you add treasury. And then I could keep doing if statements like this on and on for 2 and 3. I could add more arguments with different values. And that's how you would define the scripted effect. So when you actually go to call the scripted effect, you have to call it with the exact same arguments and the exact same number of arguments that the scripted effect is defined with, or it won't recognize it. So here we have, I'm passing in my numbers to the scripted effect, and this would actually run this effect. You can use this in a different file. So say I was over here and I just declared this in my scripted effects file, I could do that. That's the power of scripted effects. It allows you to reuse chunks of code so you don't have to repeat yourself a million times, which is very important. Let's go to scripted. I'm going to go to scripted triggers next because they're very similar to scripted effects. They're essentially the exact same thing, except they're triggers instead of effects. And here is how I would define an example scripted trigger. And here's how I would use one. You can also use it without arguments. If you have no arguments, the usage is simply my trigger equals yes. And that is scripted triggers and scripted functions, or scripted effects. Please use them. You look at scripted GUIs next. These are actually we're just going to skip those. If you know what they are, you know what they are. If you don't, you don't. 1 second. Plug on my computer. Alright, these are scripted lists. Scripted lists are, I guess they're ways to create your own iterators, like any, every, ordered, and stuff like that. So here's an example. That's a really complicated example. Here's an example of a simple scripted list that creates any, every, ordered trade center that functions as every provinces that has any of these modifiers. So now that I have this defined in my scripted lists folder, I can now use every trade center to iterate over all trade centers, and it works. And it'll just iterate over every, as you can see there's a base. The base is a little bit confusing. So you see it's region province. So it's based on this iterator that is a hard-coded iterator. It's in vanilla. And you use that as the base. You take the every or the any off and you put it in like that. So what this does is it iterates through every region province that has these modifiers in the region scope. That's scripted lists. I wouldn't use them ever. The only time you should use them is if you find like you have a big piece of code that's extremely slow. Scripted lists can actually improve performance. I'm going to skip scripted modifiers because nobody uses those. Subject types. Subject types are, I'm not even going to talk about those. They're fucking annoying. If you need to make one, you'll figure it out. Terrain types. Got your basic terrain. This is just like everything else. You just have a modifier and a color. Titles are all hard-coded. Don't worry about those. Trade goods. Trade goods all have a color. Country modifier. This is the modifier that you get when you have a surplus in your capital. Yeah. And then they also have the province modifier that you get when you just import it to a province. The gold cost and the category. Traits. There are character traits. There are several kinds. We have status traits. Status traits aren't automatically applied. You basically use them in events. There's two other kinds. There's personality traits. These ones are automatically given to characters. You don't even have to do anything with it. And then there's also health traits. You can set a trait as congenial, evidently. I'm not sure how that works. I don't think it's like a guaranteed chance of inheritance, but it's like low. These are character modifiers, and then you have military traits. In the character traits, you can give modifiers for units and the country, and these are the basic one is just character modifiers. That's traits. We look at Wargoals, last one, in common. So you can make custom Wargoals, and they do work. However, you cannot make new Wargoal types. So typically what you'll want to do is if you make a new Wargoal, it's going to want to use the superiority. So you just have this, use a Civil War Conquest, you know what that is. It's basically the Diadochi War style. That makes a big difference. There's an allow trigger. This is like what makes it show up in the window. Like, are you allowed to even use this war? There's the conquer cost for defender and attacker. You can adjust that. And there's ticking war score. I wouldn't mess with that one. I don't know what it does. But you can use these Wargoals in script with the declare war with Wargoal effect. And it looks something like this. I don't think I did it exactly right. Like this. So this would declare Imperial Conquest War on Carthage. Cool. We're done with the common folder. There's only a few more things I want to look at. We have decisions. These are very easy. They're also very annoying to mod because they do not dynamically reload. Country decisions. So you need this line. I don't know why. And then you need to wrap the whole folder in this, or whole file in this country decisions. You define each decision just has a potential highlights provinces, allow, effect, AI. That's decisions. They're very easy. Now we're going to look at events. So here is a basic country event. Pretend this is an event file. So in event files, you need to first declare a namespace at the very top of the event file that defines like what the events in the file actually are. Events have type, title, description. You can have dynamic descriptions. Somehow. Yeah, it would be like, this is the syntax. So you can either have just a simple description that returns like the same one always, or you can have a dynamic one with several triggers that returns a different description based on a certain trigger here. You can set a picture. This is just all of the event pictures that we looked at earlier. Using one of these that has special triggers, I'll give like a cultural specific one that's appropriate. It can be good for some events. You can set a left and a right portrait. You can set 3 of each of these, so you can set 3 left portraits and 3 right portraits in total. You got a trigger for the event. This is what makes the event happen. These are important. Make sure they're not too slow, and make sure that your trigger roughly mirrors your immediate. So here's an example. Say I wanted to make an event that checks if any character has 99 popularity, right? And then in my immediate, I want to save a random character with 99 popularity. And then I also, there's one more field that I'm not showing here. Can't spell. So you can save the character's location, and then you can do this go to underscore. I don't remember what it's called. Of course I don't. Go to location. And this will add a little button to the top right of the event that'll you can click on, that'll pan to where the event is. And then you have options. Yep. Options can have several things. You can have this highlight. This will highlight the option like in a different, I don't know, color scheme, I guess. It looks cooler. Exclusive. This will, if the trigger for this is true, this will be the only option that they're allowed to take. And then there's also the trigger. And the option is just a basic effect field like all the others. That is events. There's a few other things you can do that I want to show. So if you wanted, you could have if you don't want, the base is a country event, which is normal for most of them, which means that the event is supposed to be in the country scope. You could also have state events, province events, character events. I believe you could do this for any scope, but those are the only ones that I've used. Your events can also be hidden. So a hidden event would just look like this. You don't need any options, you don't need any of the other stuff. All you need is an immediate, a trigger, and a type. And this hidden equals yes line. I think that's all I wanted to go over. I'm going to go over the localization system real quick, I guess. Actually, no, I'm not. You understand it. I don't think I want to talk about anything else. That is Imperator Rome modding. Goodbye.